It was a typical Tuesday evening. I was sitting at my kitchen table, doing what I've done every month for the past 40 years, going over my finances. There's something comforting about balancing the books. It's one of those things I picked up in my days as a forensic accountant. Old habits die hard, especially when you're used to scrutinizing every penny. The phone rang at exactly 11:47 p.m. I know because I'd been staring at the clock. It was Marcus, my son. He sounded different, more tired than usual, like something was weighing on him. His voice came through the speaker, strained. "Hey, Dad, sorry to call this late, but can we come over tomorrow? Jennifer and I need to talk to you about something important." The word important stuck with me. It hung in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd heard it before whenever someone needed something. Family, friends, coworkers, they always say important when they want something. But then again, Marcus was my only son, and after losing Sarah 3 years ago, he was the last of my immediate family. So I agreed. I didn't sleep that night. Something in his tone kept me awake, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. It wasn't worry. It wasn't excitement, it was calculation. I'd worked with enough business executives to know that sound, but Marcus, my son, probably just me being paranoid. The next morning, I made my coffee, did some light stretching, and waited for them to arrive. They came right on time at 10 o'clock. Marcus walked in, his hair a little messy, looking like he hadn't gotten a good night's sleep. Jennifer, on the other hand, was in a stiff business suit, carrying a leather portfolio like she was about to close a deal. That should have been my first red flag. "Dad, you look great," Marcus said, his voice almost too upbeat. But he didn't meet my eyes. We hugged briefly, and they sat down on the couch, the same couch where Sarah and I used to sit and watch Marcus grow up. The same couch where we'd celebrated his graduation, his wedding, and countless other moments. Jennifer wasted no time. "Robert, we've been discussing your future," she said, using my full name, which already felt out of place. "We're family, after all, not business partners." "We're concerned about you, Robert," she continued, her tone dripping with concern. "You're 68 now, and this house, it's too big for one person. The maintenance alone must be exhausting." I shot a quick glance at Marcus. He was looking down at his shoes, avoiding my gaze. I was about to protest, but Jennifer kept going, her voice smooth as silk. "Think about it. What if something happens? What if you fall and no one knows for days? There are these lovely communities for active seniors. We've been researching options. Places where you'll have support, activities, and people your age." I felt the blood rush to my face. I knew what was coming. "You mean a nursing home?" I said, my voice steady but tight. No, not a nursing home," Marcus interjected quickly. "It's different, Dad. You'd have your own apartment. Meals are provided, medical staff is on call 24/7. Think of it like a hotel with extra support." It was the same speech I had heard from countless friends and acquaintances who had been sold on the idea of these so-called senior living communities. It sounded reasonable, but I wasn't buying it. Jennifer kept pushing, but I wasn't ready for that. "Let me think about it," I said. It was the only thing I could say to keep the peace, but in my gut I knew what this was about. It wasn't about me needing help. It was about taking control. That was the first crack in the foundation. But little did I know, it was only the beginning. After Marcus and Jennifer left, I sat there in the silence of my living room, staring at the spot where they'd been sitting only moments ago. I could feel my pulse still racing from the conversation. It was strange. It didn't make sense. I had spent 37 years in this house. It was more than a home. It was where I had raised Marcus, where Sarah and I had shared our dreams, and where I had rebuilt my life after her passing. This place was the only constant I had left, the only part of my past that was still standing. But Marcus, he wanted me out. And Jennifer, well, I wasn't sure what to think about her. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just concern for my well-being. Of course, I wasn't stupid. I knew how the world worked. Jennifer was always the practical one. She had money, she had status, she was a fixer. I had seen how she operated in their marriage. Always the one to find a solution for every problem, always the one to make decisions. And it seemed like now, my life was the latest problem that needed a solution. "It's for your own good, Robert," she had said, her voice laced with that soft, patronizing tone she always used when she thought she knew better. "We're just trying to help." I had spent years providing for Marcus, making sure he never went without. And now, here he was, sitting in my house with his wife, suggesting that I needed to move. Not only suggesting pressuring me, it felt like I had become invisible, as if my voice didn't matter anymore. It wasn't that I was afraid of change, I had done that before. After Sarah died, I had to change everything about my life. I had to reinvent myself, to figure out how to balance being a single father and running a business. I had built everything from the ground up, but now it wasn't just about change. It was about control. I needed some air. The next day, I decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. It was a sunny spring day, and as I strolled down the familiar streets, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision that was looming over me. The sidewalks were lined with trees that had just started to bloom, their branches heavy with pink blossoms. It was beautiful, but it felt like a backdrop to my own life, a life that was slowly slipping out of my hands. The walk didn't clear my head like I had hoped. In fact, it made me more aware of how much had changed, how much I had ignored over the years. I hadn't noticed how distant Marcus had become in recent months. He wasn't the same son who would call me just to talk, or the one who'd come over for dinner once a week. The calls had become less frequent. The visits less regular. He was busy, sure, but this was different. This was something else. I could feel the bitter taste of resentment creeping up on me. I hadn't been a perfect father, but I had given him everything I could. And now it felt like he was telling me my life no longer mattered. Like it was time for me to be put out to pasture. When I returned home, I decided I needed answers. So I called Marcus. "Hey, Dad, what's up?" His voice came through, light and distracted, like it always did when he had something on his mind, but didn't he want to deal with it? "Can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, sure. What's on your mind?" "About what you and Jennifer said yesterday." I began, carefully choosing my words. "About the house." There was a pause. I could hear the change in his breathing, the shift in tone. "Dad, listen," he started, his voice softer. "I know it's hard, but we're just thinking about what's best for you. I don't want you to be alone in that big house. You've done so much for me, and now it's time for us to make sure you're taken care of." "I don't need to be taken care of, Marcus," I interrupted. "I'm fine. This house is where I want to be. It's my home. I know it's your home, but it's a lot of work for you. And, there's also the safety concerns. What happens if something happens and no one's around?" Marcus's words felt rehearsed, like they had been rehearsed by someone else. Jennifer, I assumed. She had always been the one to speak for him when it came to matters of money or logistics. "Do you really think I'm that fragile?" I said, the anger rising in my chest. "You think I am just some old man who needs to be shuffled off to some community because you and Jennifer are worried about me?" "No, that's not it at all," Marcus said, his tone defensive. "We just want you to be safe, Dad. We don't want anything to happen to you." "Then why don't you just let me live my life? Why don't you just let me decide what's best for me?" My voice was rising now, and I could feel the frustration building inside me. "I've spent my entire life taking care of you, and now it feels like I'm the one being taken care of. This isn't what I want. And you, Marcus, need to understand that." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could tell he was processing what I'd said, trying to figure out how to handle it, but there was no easy answer. This wasn't something he could fix with a quick apology or a promise of better behavior. This was about boundaries. This was about respect. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't just his father anymore. I was a person with my own wants, my own needs, and maybe it was time to start demanding respect. "I'm sorry, Dad," Marcus said, his voice softening. "I didn't mean to push you like that. I just want what's best for you. But I'll think about what you said." "One really will. I appreciate that," I replied, taking a deep breath. "But you need to understand, Marcus. This is my life, and I'll live it the way I want to. Not the way you or Jennifer think I should." That was the turning point. It wasn't the end of the conversation, but it was the beginning of a new understanding. It wasn't about him agreeing with me. It was about him realizing that I wasn't going to just roll over and let them decide my future. This was my decision to make, and I wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how well-intentioned, take that away from me. That evening I sat down at my desk and made a decision. I wasn't going to let my son's well-meaning but misplaced concern dictate my future. It was time to take back control. The days after the phone call felt like a blur, like I was walking through life with my head in a fog. I couldn't get the conversation out of my mind. I kept replaying Marcus's words over and over in my head, trying to figure out what he was really saying between the lines. He didn't come out and say it directly, but I knew he was trying to push me out. He wanted me out of this house. He wanted me in one of those nice senior living communities he and Jennifer had been researching. A place with activities and help and convenience. For them, not for me. I wasn't an idiot. I had been around the block long enough to recognize a manipulation when I saw one. Jennifer had always been the planner, the one with the agenda. It wasn't just about my well-being, it was about convenience. It was about control. But I wasn't ready to give up my home. I couldn't. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was a part of me. I had spent 37 years in these rooms. I had built it with my own hands, paid for it with blood, sweat, and tears. I had raised Marcus here. This was the house where I held him in my arms after Sarah passed away, where I watched him grow from a boy into a man. This house had seen it all. It had witnessed our triumphs, our heartaches, and everything in between. It was a part of me, and no amount of persuasive speech from Marcus or Jennifer would change that. But as the days went on, I began to realize that I wasn't just fighting for my home. I was fighting for my dignity. The next day I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let them make this choice for me. I had to take control of my own life again. So I called Marcus, but this time I wasn't calling to plead my case. I wasn't calling to explain myself. I was calling to set a boundary. "Marcus," I said when he answered, my voice firm, "I've been thinking about what you said about the house, and I need you to understand something." There was a pause, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice when he spoke. "Yeah, Dad, I know it's a lot, but we just want what's best for you." "I'm not trying to push you, I swear." I took a deep breath. "No, Marcus, it's not that. I'm not asking you to help me. I'm not asking for your approval. This house is mine, and I'm not going anywhere. You don't get to decide that for me." I heard the air leave his lungs on the other end. "Dad, Let me finish," I cut him off. "You've been talking about what's best for me, but have you thought about what I want? I'm 68 years old, Marcus. I've spent my life sacrificing for you, for your future, but now it's time for me to live for myself. And I don't need you or Jennifer making decisions for me anymore." Another long silence. It was like he didn't know how to respond, but I wasn't about to let him off the hook. I needed him to understand that I was done being treated like I wasn't capable of making my own decisions. "I'm sorry, Dad," he finally said, his voice soft but still defensive. "I didn't mean to push you, but it's hard to see you doing all this work. It's exhausting, and I just I want you to be comfortable, safe." "I am comfortable," I said, my frustration beginning to show. "And I don't need you to worry about me. I've taken care of myself my whole life. I'm not asking for your charity or your control. I'm asking for your respect." There was another silence, but this one felt different. It felt like something had shifted in the air between us. Marcus wasn't arguing anymore. He was listening. "I get it, Dad. I'm sorry." "I really am," he said, his voice quieter. "I don't want to control your life. I just thought—" "I know what you thought," I interrupted gently. "But it's not your life to control, it's mine. And I'm going to live it on my terms." The conversation ended with a sense of finality. It wasn't a resolution, it wasn't a happy ending, but it was a moment of clarity. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken control of my own narrative. Over the next few days, I spent a lot of time thinking about what Marcus had said, about how he had just wanted what was best for me. It didn't sit right. I started to notice how often he had used that line. How often people used it when they were trying to push their own agendas, wrapped in a neat package of concern. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I wasn't some helpless old man. I wasn't someone who needed to be taken care of. I had lived on my own for years after Sarah died. I had managed. And now, after all these years of giving everything to my son, it was time for me to start taking back what was mine, my life, my home, my choices. But Marcus wasn't the only one I had to worry about. That afternoon I called Jennifer. She hadn't said much when we talked the other day, but I had a feeling she was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. It was always the same with her, calculating, efficient, but with a sharp edge to her charm. She was the one who had researched all these senior living communities, the one who had pitched the idea to Marcus. She wasn't just the worried wife. She was the one who saw the potential in everything, including me. "Jennifer," I said when she answered. "We need to talk." "What about?" Her voice was cool, professional. "The house," I said, not wasting any time. "I know this is what you've been pushing Marcus to suggest. But you don't get to decide what's best for me either. I've lived in this house for 37 years. It's my home, and I'm not going anywhere." There was a long silence. I could practically hear her calculating, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she spoke. "Robert, I understand you're upset," she said, her tone much colder than Marcus's. "But you need to understand. It's not just about the house. It's about your safety, your well-being. We want you to be happy, but we also want to make sure you're living somewhere you can manage. This house is too much for you." "It's not too much for me," I said, my voice sharp. "I don't need you or Marcus to make decisions for me. I'm capable of making my own choices." She sighed heavily on the other end. "I get it, Robert. I really do. But this is about more than just the house. We're worried about you. I've taken care of myself my whole life," I said firmly, "and I will continue to do so." The conversation ended without resolution, just like the one with Marcus. But it wasn't over. I wasn't going to let them wear me down. I had made my decision. I wasn't going anywhere. The days after my phone call with Jennifer were quieter than I expected. My gut told me this wasn't going to be the end of it, far from it. I knew Marcus and Jennifer weren't the kind of people to let things go without a fight. They would keep pushing. I just had to decide whether I was going to keep fighting back or let them wear me down. I had learned over the years that letting people walk all over you wasn't the way to live. I wasn't going to let my son, my only son, push me out of the home that I had worked my entire life for. I had already sacrificed more than enough for him. For them, I spent a lot of time alone in the house, thinking, reflecting. The silence of the empty room settled around me, but it wasn't unsettling. It was soothing. The old wood floors creaked under my weight as I walked through the house, each step resonating with memories I had built. Marcus had grown up here, running through these halls, playing in the yard. I had seen every stage of his life unfold within these walls, and as much as I loved him, the idea of leaving it all behind felt like a betrayal to myself. It had taken me years to create this life. This home, I wasn't about to let anyone, not even my own son, take it from me. That evening I took a walk around the neighborhood. The streets were still the same, the trees lining the sidewalks just as they had been for the past 30 years. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the familiar houses. Everything seemed still, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. As I walked past the homes of my neighbors, I couldn't help but wonder how many of them had gone through what I was facing. How many of them had been pushed out by their own children, forced into those so-called senior communities, because it was better for them. I had heard the stories how people became isolated, removed from everything they had known. I didn't want to be one of those people. I had worked too hard for this life. And if I was going to stand my ground, I needed to know that I wasn't doing it out of stubbornness, but out of a real desire to preserve my dignity, my independence. I wasn't going to let Marcus and Jennifer rob me of that. The following day, Marcus called again. I could tell by the tone of his voice that he was about to apologize, to try to smooth things over. He was trying to play the role of the dutiful son, but I wasn't buying it. "Dad, I know things got heated the other day," he said, his voice tentative. "I just want you to know that I'm not trying to force you into anything. We just want to help, you know? We're worried about you." I held the phone to my ear, gripping it tightly. His words, the same ones Jennifer had said, felt like an excuse. A cop-out. "I know what you're saying, Marcus," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But I don't need you to worry about me. I don't need to be helped. You've had your whole life to get to where you are. You've had your successes. And now it's my turn." "Dad, it's not like that," he replied quickly. "I just want to make sure you're okay. You've always done so much for me." I'm just trying to do what's best for you now. We're all thinking about what's best for you. The phrase, what's best for you again? It wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what they thought was best for me. It was about control. No, Marcus, I said, cutting him off. You've made it clear what you think is best for me. But it's not your life. It's mine. I've given enough. I've done enough. And I'm not going anywhere. Not unless I choose to. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought maybe he was going to argue. But he didn't. Instead, I heard a quiet sigh. I'm sorry, Dad, he said, his voice a little softer. I didn't mean to make you feel like I was forcing you. I don't know. I've been so worried about you. It's hard, you know? It's hard seeing you alone in that big house. I'm not alone, I said, my tone still steady. I'm fine. You've got your family, Marcus. I've got mine. And this house is part of it. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you that I'm staying here. I understand, Dad, he said quietly. I do. I just want you to be happy. I will be, Marcus. I will be. The next few days passed uneventfully, but I could feel the tension building under the surface. I knew Marcus wasn't giving up, and I had a feeling Jennifer wouldn't either. I had seen the way she handled things in the past. She wasn't the type to back down easily. She always had a plan, a solution for everything. And I had a sinking feeling that she was already working on her next move. It didn't take long for Jennifer to reach out. She called one afternoon, her voice cool and collected. Robert, I've been thinking, she began, as if we were just having a casual conversation. I know this isn't easy for you, but I think we need to discuss the next steps. We can help you get settled into a place that's safer for you. We can handle all the details. All you have to do is make the decision. I've already made my decision, I said firmly. And it's not what you want, Jennifer. I'm not leaving this house. I'm not going to some community you've picked out for me. Robert, don't be so stubborn, she said, her voice turning a little sharper. This isn't about what you want. It's about what's best for you. You're not getting any younger. You can't keep up with all the maintenance on this place. You're going to hurt yourself, or worse, no one will be there when something happens. I could feel my blood pressure rising. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I don't need you to do that for me. I've been doing it for years. Clearly, you're not, Robert, she shot back. We're just trying to help. I don't want you to fall behind. You need help, and you need to admit it. It's not a weakness to ask for help. I've asked for help all my life, Jennifer, I said, my voice low and steady. But this time? This time, I'm not asking. I'm telling you, I'm staying here. And you need to respect that. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, but she didn't speak. It was like she was weighing her options, trying to figure out how to twist the situation in her favor. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you, Robert. You're making a mistake. I'm not making a mistake, I said firmly, feeling a surge of confidence. I'm making my own choice. And that's what matters. I hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of anger and relief. This wasn't over, but it was a battle I was willing to fight. I had been pushed around for too long, by Marcus, by Jennifer, and by everyone who thought they knew what was best for me. It was time to stand my ground. I wasn't going anywhere. I woke up the next morning feeling like I was walking on a tightrope. The decision to stay in my home, to fight for what I felt was mine, hadn't been easy, but there was a strange sense of clarity about it. I knew that there would be consequences. There always were when you made a stand against someone who thought they knew what was best for you. And as much as I hated to admit it, that someone was my own son. It had been a few days since my last conversation with Marcus and Jennifer. The phone calls had stopped. I hadn't heard from Marcus in a while, and the silence was beginning to feel unnatural. I knew he was busy with his life, his family, his work, but there was always a part of me that expected a call after a conversation like that. It was as if we were both waiting for the other to back down, but neither of us was willing to give an inch. The house felt different now. Not in a bad way, but in a way that made me more aware of everything: the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was a constant reminder that I was alone. I didn't mind the solitude, but it was starting to sink in that this was it. I had no one else to rely on, no one to turn to. It was just me and the house. And then there was Marcus. I had always been proud of him. From the moment he was born, I had done everything I could to give him the life I never had. I had worked late hours, taken on extra jobs, and made countless sacrifices just so he could have opportunities. I wanted him to be more than I was, to live a life free from the struggles I had faced. And for a while it felt like I was succeeding. He went to Stanford, got a job in a field he loved, and started a family with Jennifer. But now, things had changed. Marcus was no longer the young man who used to look up to me. He was someone different. Someone who saw his father as a problem, someone who needed to be fixed or managed. He didn't seem to see the sacrifices I had made for him, and it was hard for me to accept that. The hardest part wasn't the pressure from Marcus and Jennifer. It was the fact that I had spent so much of my life giving to him, and now I was left with nothing but my memories. I had given him everything, and yet it felt like I was the one who had been forgotten. My own son, my flesh and blood, was pushing me aside, making decisions for me without even asking what I wanted. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my relationship with Marcus had been changing long before Jennifer entered the picture. I'd always tried to be the perfect father, the perfect provider. But somewhere along the way I had lost sight of who I was. I had spent so many years bending over backward to make sure Marcus had everything he needed that I had forgotten to take care of myself. It wasn't that I regretted the sacrifices I had made. I didn't, but I had allowed myself to fade into the background of his life. I had let my identity be tied to him, to his success, to his happiness. I had poured so much of myself into his future that I had forgotten to nurture my own. I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring out the window at the garden. The flowers Sarah used to plant were still blooming, vibrant, and colorful, but they felt like strangers to me now. They were just another part of the past, another reminder of what had been lost. I didn't want to live in the past anymore. I didn't want to cling to memories of a life I couldn't get back. I had to move forward, but how? The answer came to me when I least expected it. I had been sitting there for what felt like hours, thinking, when the phone rang. I hesitated before answering. It could be Marcus or Jennifer. But when I looked at the caller ID, I was surprised to see a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Robert?" A woman's voice asked, soft but authoritative. "This is Sandra from the Silverwood Retirement Community. I'm calling to follow up on your inquiry about our facility." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I had never in my life reached out to a retirement community, but I had a feeling this was Jennifer's doing. She had probably contacted them behind my back, hoping I'd be swayed by some brochure or sales pitch. I could already feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I didn't let it show. "I didn't inquire about anything," I said, keeping my tone as calm as I could. "I'm not interested in your facility." "Oh, I see," Sandra said, her voice a little flustered. "Well, I apologize for the misunderstanding. I just wanted to make sure you had all the information in case you changed your mind." I hung up the phone without saying another word. Jennifer's manipulation was becoming more obvious by the day. She wasn't going to give up, and I wasn't going to back down. That evening I called Marcus. "Hey, Dad," he said, sounding casual, too casual, like everything was fine. "How's it going?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice tight. "But we need to talk? About what?" he asked, his tone shifting slightly, like he knew this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. "About you and Jennifer pushing me to move out of this house," I said, my voice steady. "About how you both think I'm incapable of taking care of myself, and about how I'm not going anywhere." "I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this," Marcus said, his voice rising. "Dad, it's not about you being incapable. It's about your safety. We're just trying to help. Why can't you see that?" "I see it perfectly," I said, my anger simmering now. "You don't care about what I want. You don't care about what I need. This is about you and Jennifer wanting to control everything. You want me out of this house so you can do whatever you want with it, and I'm not going to let you?" There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "Dad," he finally said, his voice quieter now. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. I just want what's best for you." I didn't respond at first. I was trying to hold back the flood of emotion threatening to break through. Marcus, I said finally, my voice softening, I've given everything for you. I've done everything I could to make sure you had a good life, but I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to let you take this house from me. It's mine. It's my home. And I'm staying. I understand, Dad, he said quietly. I get it now. I'm sorry. I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, exhausted. This battle wasn't over. It wasn't even close. But for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. Marcus had finally heard me. And maybe, just maybe, I had found a way to take back control of my life. The days after my conversation with Marcus felt like a blur. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Life continued. I went to the local diner for my morning coffee, read the paper, and took walks around the neighborhood. But inside I was restless. The decision to stand my ground had been made, but it hadn't come without a cost. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, looking back at the life I had built, but not sure what the future held. I had spent over 30 years working for my family, 30 years building this house. And now it seemed like all of that, everything I had worked for, was being questioned. Not just by Jennifer, but by Marcus as well. It was as though the life I had built had become something I needed to justify. And the weight of that was crushing. I spent hours in the quiet of the house, looking through old photos, reading letters I had kept from when Marcus was a child. They were filled with hope, ambition, and the dreams I had for him. I had believed in those dreams so strongly. But now, those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else. They didn't belong to me anymore. It wasn't until one afternoon that the full weight of it all came crashing down. I had just returned from another long walk through the neighborhood. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the streets. I was sitting on the porch, the breeze ruffling my hair. When I saw him, Marcus, he was standing at the end of the driveway, staring at the house. I didn't know how long he had been standing there, but it felt like a moment frozen in time. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry or resentful. I just felt tired. Tired of the fighting, tired of the pressure, tired of everything. He hesitated for a moment before walking up the stairs to the porch, his hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket. He looked older, more worn than I remembered. The last time I saw him, he seemed full of excuses, full of justifications for his actions. But now, there was something different about him. Maybe it was the way he stood hesitant, like he didn't know how to approach me anymore. Or maybe it was in the way his eyes avoided mine, as if he was ashamed. "Dad," he said, his voice softer than I expected. He sat down beside me, not saying anything at first. We just sat there, in silence, looking out over the yard. The soft sound of crickets filled the air. The world seemed so still, yet inside of me, everything felt like it was moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. "I've been thinking about what you said," Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking slightly. "About everything, about the house, about me, and I want to say I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much you've done for me, how much you've sacrificed." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, but when it finally came, I wasn't sure how to react. It was like hearing a song you love for the first time in years, but with a different tone. There was something raw, something real in his voice that made me believe him. "I've been so focused on my own life," Marcus continued, his voice quiet now. "On building my career, on making money, on what I wanted, that I lost sight of what really mattered. I lost sight of you, Dad, and I'm sorry for that." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't know how to respond. The weight of his words was still settling in, like a heavy stone that had been dropped into my chest. "Marcus," I said finally, turning to face him. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. "I didn't do everything for you because I expected something in return. I did it because I loved you. Because you were my son. But somewhere along the way, I stopped living for myself. And I let you take over that space. I let you take me for granted. And I'm not going to do that anymore." Marcus nodded, looking down at his hands, clearly processing what I had said. For a long time, neither of us spoke. It was as if the words between us didn't need to be said. They were already understood. "I'm not asking you to fix everything, Marcus," I said softly. "I'm not asking you to make up for all the years. But I am asking for your respect. I want to live the life I've worked for. I want to stay in this house because it's mine, and I'm not going to be pushed out. Not by you, not by anyone. Marcus looked up at me then, his eyes wide, as if he was seeing me for the first time. And in that moment, I could see the shift. The realization that things had to change. That he couldn't keep treating me like the background of his life. That I wasn't just his father. I was a person with my own dreams, my own desires, and my own life. I get it, Dad, Marcus said finally, his voice steady now. I really do. I've been selfish. I've been focusing on what I thought was important, and I've ignored everything that actually matters. You matter, Dad. You've always mattered. And I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. I could see the sincerity in his eyes. For the first time, it felt like we were on the same page. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my son was truly listening. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about us. It was about the years of misunderstandings, the distance between us, the things we hadn't said, the things we hadn't heard. And now, finally, we were starting to hear each other. I know I can't change the past, Dad, Marcus continued, his voice quieter now. But I want to start over. I want to build a relationship with you. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this. I don't want to be the son who only calls when he needs something. You've got a long way to go. Marcus, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. But I'm willing to try. We'll do this together. But only if you're serious about it. I am. Dad, I promise. Later that night I sat alone in the quiet of the living room, reflecting on what had happened. For the first time in a long time, I felt like Marcus was seeing me not just as a father, but as a man with his own desires, his own needs. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. The phone rang again that night, but this time it was a call I wasn't expecting. It was Jennifer. That evening, after the conversation with Marcus, I felt an unexpected sense of calm. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for so long had lightened. The walls that had been between me and my son had started to come down. It was as though a layer of tension had finally peeled away, and there was room for something new to grow between us. But as I sat there, reflecting on the words I had said to Marcus, the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer it. It was Jennifer. I could feel my chest tighten just hearing her name on the caller ID. I hadn't heard from her since our last conversation, and I knew what this call would be about. I knew she wasn't going to let it go. I took a deep breath before picking up the phone. Hello? I said, trying to sound neutral, even though I could feel the tension in my throat. Robert? Jennifer's voice came through, cool and controlled as always. We need to talk, I sighed inwardly. Of course we needed to talk. The question was, what did she want this time? I'm listening, I said, sitting up straighter. Marcus and I have been thinking, she began, her voice smooth and calculated. We understand that you're upset. We understand that this is difficult, but we're just trying to help you. We don't want you to be alone in that house. We don't want you to feel abandoned. It felt like a rehearsed speech. One I had heard 1,000 times from people trying to justify what they were doing, trying to make it seem like they were the ones doing the right thing, and I was the one making it difficult. Jennifer, I don't need your help, I said, my voice firmer than I intended. I am not some helpless old man who needs to be put in a facility because you and Marcus think it's for my own good. I'm fine. I've been living here alone for years, and I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I know you think that, Robert, Jennifer replied, her voice soft but patronizing. But you can't keep living in denial. You've been in that house for decades. It's too much for one person to manage, especially with your health. We're worried about you. You need to think about your future, about your safety. I could feel my blood pressure rising. It was the same argument she had been making all along: safety, convenience, peace of mind. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what was easy for them. I don't need you to worry about my safety, Jennifer, I said, my voice hard now. I'm not asking for your permission to live in my own home. You and Marcus can keep treating me like this, like I'm some kind of liability? I could hear her sigh on the other end of the line. Robert, I'm just trying to do what's best for you, and I know Marcus feels the same way. He's just worried. You need to stop being so stubborn, stubborn. That was the word she always used when she wanted to undermine me. When she wanted to make me feel like my decision to stay in my own home was some form of childish defiance. "I'm not stubborn, Jennifer," I said, my voice shaking slightly with the effort to control my anger. "I'm standing up for myself, and I'm not going to be pushed out of my own home." "Robert, please," she said, her tone finally softening just a little. "You have to understand that we're doing this because we love you. But you're making this so much harder than it has to be." I was silent for a long moment. The silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. I knew this wasn't going to be the end of it. Jennifer wasn't the type of person to back down easily, especially when she thought she was in the right. But I couldn't back down either. I had already given up so much of myself for them. For Marcus. For everyone. "I've made my decision, Jennifer," I said, my voice steady but resolute, "and I'm not changing it. I'm staying in this house. If you and Marcus can't respect that, then we have nothing else to talk about." There was a pause, and for a moment I thought she might say something more, try to argue or convince me again, but she didn't. "Fine," she said, her voice cold now. "But don't say I didn't warn you," and with that she hung up the phone. I sat there for a long while, my thoughts swirling. I had no illusions that this was over. I had no doubt that Marcus and Jennifer would keep pushing, keep trying to wear me down. But for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let them control my life anymore. I was done being the silent partner in my own story. I had spent so many years doing what others wanted, first for Sarah, then for Marcus, that I had lost track of what I needed. It was time for me to take back control. The next few days were filled with a strange, uneasy silence. Marcus didn't call, and neither did Jennifer. It was almost as if they were waiting for me to back down, but I wasn't going to. I had made my stand, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. I knew what they were hoping for. They were hoping I would cave in, that I would eventually see the logic in their plan and agree to move into one of those places where everything was taken care of for me. They were hoping I would let them take care of me the way they thought I needed to be taken care of. But I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to give up my independence, to let someone else dictate my life. Not now, not ever. The silence between us was broken a week later when Marcus finally called. His voice was hesitant, but I could hear something else in it, something I hadn't heard before. Sincerity. "Dad, I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet. "And I realize I haven't been the best son. I've been selfish. And I've been pushing you in a direction you didn't want to go. I'm sorry for that." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words I had waited so long to hear were finally coming out of his mouth. But they didn't come with a sense of victory. They came with a sense of relief. "I don't want to make decisions for you," Marcus continued, his voice steady now. I just want you to be safe. But I get it now. You're right. This is your decision to make." "Not mine." "I'm glad to hear you say that," I said quietly. "But Marcus, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the house. This is about me taking control of my own life again. It's about me making choices that are mine. Not just what you or Jennifer think is best for me." "I understand, Dad," he said. "I do." For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like Marcus was finally seeing me. Not as an old man who needed to be cared for, but as his father, a man who was still capable of making his own choices. The weight I had been carrying, the guilt, the anger, it all started to fade. Maybe this wasn't the end of the road, but it was a start. A real start. The weeks following my conversation with Marcus were quiet, almost too quiet. For the first time in a long time, the phone didn't ring every day with Marcus on the other end, trying to convince me to move out. The texts stopped coming. Jennifer, surprisingly, had kept her distance too, as if she knew that pushing me further wasn't going to get her anywhere. I was left with the unsettling calm of uncertainty. I didn't know what to make of it. On the one hand, I was relieved. I wasn't being bombarded with suggestions, with pressure, with the constant reminder that I was growing older, that I wasn't as strong as I used to be. But on the other hand, there was a nagging sense that I had lost something in all of this. A sense of connection with my son, with my family. Was this the result of finally standing my ground? Or was this the calm before the storm? One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, I sat on the porch, nursing a cup of coffee, when I heard the sound of tires crunching against the gravel driveway. I knew it was Marcus before I even looked up. He had that same hesitant walk, the one he always had when he knew he was about to face something uncomfortable. I put my cup down and watched him approach, trying to steady the unease that had built in my chest over the past few days. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice a little tight as he sat beside me. "Can I talk to you?" I nodded, not saying anything at first. It had been quiet between us, but I could feel something hanging in the air. He looked different today, tired, worn down. I could see the lines in his face a little more clearly. "I've been thinking," Marcus began, his voice quiet, "about everything that's been going on, about how I've been pushing you, about what I said. And I realize I've been a jerk. I didn't know how to respond to that." This wasn't the same son I had known a few months ago, the one who was always so sure of himself, so confident in his decisions. This was a son who was acknowledging his mistakes. It was hard to accept, but at the same time it felt like something had shifted. Maybe it was the guilt. Maybe it was just the realization that he had to face the consequences of his actions. "Marcus," I said softly, "it's not just about what you said. It's about what you've been doing, how you've been treating me. I didn't ask for your help. I didn't need you to decide my life for me. I've spent my whole life making decisions for you, sacrificing everything so you could have the best future. And now I just want the same respect. I want to live the way I choose." Marcus nodded, his eyes downcast. "I get it now, Dad, I really do. I thought I was doing the right thing by helping, but I didn't see how much I was taking from you in the process. I was just so wrapped up in trying to fix everything that I forgot to just listen to you." His words hit me harder than I expected. I could feel the lump in my throat, the tears threatening to break through, but I kept them in check. This was not a time for weakness. This was a time for clarity. "I know you were trying to help, Marcus," I said, taking a deep breath, "but it's not about fixing me. It's about respecting me. I'm not broken. I don't need fixing. I need to be heard." There was another pause, the kind of pause that says more than words ever could. He sat there, staring ahead, probably reflecting on everything I had said. I wanted to reach out, to tell him that it was okay, that everything could be fixed. But I knew it wasn't that simple. We had both been too stubborn, too caught up in our own lives to truly understand each other. "I want to make it right, Dad," Marcus finally said, his voice low. "I know I've let you down, but I want to be here for you. I want us to rebuild what we've lost. I want to be a better son." I turned to him, finally meeting his eyes. "You've already started, Marcus. Just by admitting your mistakes, by trying to understand where I'm coming from. But this isn't something that can be fixed overnight. It's going to take time. And I'm not going to pretend like it's going to be easy, but I'm willing to try. Are you?" He nodded slowly, the weight of my words settling over him. "Yeah, I am. I'm ready to do the work." We sat there in silence for a while, the evening light fading, the temperature dropping slightly. It felt like the first time in years that we were truly having an honest conversation. I had always tried to be the strong one, the one who fixed things, who took care of everything. But in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't have to carry all of this on my own anymore. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the space I was taking up in Marcus's life and the space he was taking up in mine. It was about learning how to share the weight, how to share the burden of our lives and our choices. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't being asked to make sacrifices anymore. Marcus was offering to meet me halfway. The next few days were different. There was an unspoken shift between us, a kind of peace that we hadn't had before. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't a solution to everything, but it was a step in the right direction. Marcus called more often. We started talking about things other than the house. He asked me how I was doing, how I was feeling. He didn't just ask about my health or my safety, he asked about me. And then, one morning, I received a call from Marcus that caught me off guard. "Dad, I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady but serious. "Jennifer and I have been talking about it, and we've decided we want to make things right. We've been looking into a new plan, a compromise. I waited for him to explain, unsure of what he meant by compromise. "We want to keep the house in the family," he said. "We don't want you to move. But we do want to make sure you have support. We're not asking you to go anywhere. We're asking if we can help you stay in the house, pay for some of the repairs, the maintenance, all the things that make it easier for you to live here. We want to set up a plan where we can contribute, but you still make the decisions." I sat there, stunned. This was something I hadn't expected. It wasn't just an apology. It wasn't just empty promises. It was an offer to respect my space, my independence, while still providing some assistance. "Marcus," I said slowly, processing what he was offering, "this is a real offer. And it's not just about the house anymore. It's about respect." He was silent for a moment before replying. "Yeah, Dad, it is. We want to respect you, and we want to help. We just want to do it together." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This wasn't the solution I had imagined, but it was something I could live with, something I could accept. I wasn't alone in this anymore, and maybe that was all I needed. In the days that followed Marcus's call, I found myself wrestling with the decision. On one hand, it felt like a small victory. My son was finally acknowledging that I wasn't the frail, helpless man they had been trying to mold me into. He had recognized my independence and was willing to meet me halfway, to work together to keep the house in the family. But on the other hand, I was still struggling with the idea of needing help, even if it was just financial assistance for repairs, maintenance, and upkeep. I had always prided myself on being self-sufficient. I'd built this life from the ground up, with my own hands. The idea of accepting help from Marcus, of letting him contribute to the place that had always been mine, felt like a blow to my pride. Still, it wasn't the first time I had faced a situation where I needed to swallow my pride. I'd done it before when Sarah passed away. I had been forced to navigate life on my own, without her guidance, without her support. But I had done it. And I had survived. It wasn't about whether I could survive this, though. It was about whether I could accept a different kind of life. One where I didn't have to do everything alone. One where I could let my son in, let him help, even if it meant surrendering some of my control. That Saturday, Marcus and Jennifer came over, just like we had planned. The air between us was different this time. There was no tension, no weight of unspoken words. Instead, it was light, easy, as if we were just two people coming together to make a decision. The old feeling of being against each other had faded, and in its place was a sense of partnership, even if it wasn't fully realized yet. "Dad, we've been thinking about what we talked about," Marcus began, his voice steady but calm. He was sitting across from me, his hands folded in front of him. Jennifer was beside him, looking every bit the professional as usual, but this time she wasn't pushing. She was just there, quiet, supportive. "And?" I asked, the anticipation heavy in the air. "We've worked out a plan," he said, glancing at Jennifer, who nodded slightly. "We're not asking you to move. But we do want to help with the maintenance, the repairs. You're right, this house is too much for one person to manage on their own. But we're willing to contribute to make it easier for you to stay here." Jennifer cleared her throat, leaning forward a little. "We're thinking of setting up a fund for repairs, upkeep, whatever you need. We contribute a portion of it each month. You'd still have full control, Robert. This house would still be yours. We just want to make sure you're comfortable." The offer was tempting. On paper, it seemed like the perfect solution, respecting my independence, while also offering the help I needed to maintain the house. It was everything I had wanted when I first fought against the idea of moving. I could stay in my home, keep my autonomy, and Marcus and Jennifer would support me without taking over. They would be there, but in a way that let me keep control. It sounded simple enough, but it wasn't. There was a catch. "I appreciate the offer," I said slowly, trying to process everything, "but there's a lot more to this than just money. This house, this life, I've built it, and I've spent the last few years making peace with the fact that I can't do everything on my own anymore. But that doesn't mean I want to feel like a burden. I don't want you to feel like you re-obligated to take care of me." Marcus looked at me, his expression sincere. "You're not a burden, Dad. I know we've had our differences, but I've realized that I'm not just doing this for you. I'm doing it for me too. I don't want you to be alone in this. You've been there for me through everything, through every mistake, every decision I've made. This is my way of being there for you. There it was again, the sincerity in his words. It wasn't just about what I needed anymore. It was about his need to make things right. It wasn't just a financial transaction. It was his way of taking responsibility for his actions, of showing me that he could step up when it mattered. I looked at Jennifer, and for the first time, I saw something different in her eyes. There was no judgment, no hint of control. She wasn't trying to dictate what I should do anymore. She was just here, supporting Marcus, supporting this decision. And maybe that was the turning point. I'm not going to make this easy for you, I said, my voice steady but soft. But I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to consider it. But I need you both to understand something. I won't be treated like I'm incapable. I don't need your charity, and I don't need your control. I need respect. If we can do this on those terms, then I'll consider it. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged a look. It wasn't the kind of look I had seen when they were plotting behind my back. This time it was understanding, a silent agreement between them. We understand, Marcus said, his voice full of conviction. We want to make sure you feel respected, Dad. That's what matters. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief that I hadn't expected. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea. Maybe there was room for compromise. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was being seen not as a burden, not as a problem to fix, but as a person. A few days later, we sat down together and began to map out the details of our new arrangement. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't easy. There were still a lot of discussions to be had, a lot of boundaries to be set. But the difference now was that we were doing it as a family, we were figuring it out together. It wasn't about control anymore, it was about respect. And for the first time in years, I felt like Marcus and I were on the same side. The first time the repairs started, I watched from the porch as Marcus worked with the contractors, overseeing the changes that were being made. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel resentful. I just felt content. This was the beginning of something new. Something that was still mine, but with the help of the people I loved. That night, after the day's work was done, Marcus and Jennifer stayed for dinner. It was simple, a home-cooked meal, the kind of dinner we used to have when Marcus was younger. The kind of dinner I had missed. As we sat around the table, eating and talking, I realized something important. This wasn't just about fixing the house. It was about fixing the relationship. I didn't know what the future held or whether this arrangement would last. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. The days after Marcus and Jennifer's offer felt strange. There was no immediate relief, no sudden rush of peace. Instead, I found myself navigating through a fog of mixed emotions, guilt, relief, doubt. I had agreed to their compromise, yes, but part of me still resented the fact that it had come to this. Why did I need them to step in? Why couldn't I just manage things on my own like I always had? The answer, of course, was staring me in the face, because I was tired. I was getting older, and it was becoming harder to keep up with the house, the maintenance, the upkeep. But that didn't mean I was ready to give up control. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of the contractors working outside, replacing the roof, patching the old walls, clearing the overgrown garden. They had started making noticeable changes, but it was still my house. My space. It felt strange to see things changing, yet also oddly comforting. It was as if I was finally accepting the reality that some things needed to change, even if I wasn't quite ready to accept it. But as the work on the house progressed, so did the shifts in my relationship with Marcus. He started coming by more often, but this time it wasn't just about checking in on the repairs or the house. It was about reconnecting. He would sit with me at the table, asking how I was doing, how I was feeling. At first, it felt awkward. There were years of distance between us, years of silence and missed moments. But little by little, it began to feel natural again. We talked about old memories, laughed about the ridiculous things I used to do to embarrass him when he was younger, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him as my son again, not as someone who was pushing me out of my life. One evening, after the contractors had left for the day, Marcus stayed behind. I had prepared dinner, just a simple roast and potatoes, but the gesture felt like more. I was showing him that I was still capable, still able to take care of myself. And maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand that. As we ate, Marcus looked at me with a strange kind of seriousness, like he was trying to say something he wasn't sure how to say. "Dad," he began, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what you've done for me, what you've sacrificed. I don't know if I'll ever be able to make up for that, but I want to try. I want you to know that I don't take it for granted anymore." I felt a lump in my throat at his words. He had always been a good son, a hard-working one, but there had always been this underlying sense of entitlement in him. This assumption that everything I had worked for was somehow his by default. But now he was saying the one thing I had always needed to hear, that he understood the weight of everything I had given up. "You don't need to make up for anything, Marcus," I said, my voice thick. "I did what I did because I loved you. I wanted you to have a better life than I had. But you've got to understand something." I paused, trying to find the words. "I'm not just here to give. I'm not just here to sacrifice everything for you. I need you to see me not just as your father, but as a person. A person with my own life, my own needs." Marcus nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know, Dad, I know. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see that." After that night, things began to change between us. Slowly but surely we started rebuilding what had been broken. It wasn't easy, it wasn't a quick fix, but it was progress. And for the first time in years, I felt like we were starting to understand each other again. Not just in terms of father and son, but as two adults who had both experienced life in different ways, both had struggles and both had regrets. One afternoon, after a particularly long week of repairs and contractors running in and out of the house, I sat on the back porch enjoying the rare moment of quiet. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the yard. I had been thinking a lot about everything, about Marcus, about the house, about my life. I realized that I had been clinging to the past for too long. I had been holding on to this house, this idea of what my life should be, and in doing so, I had lost sight of what I really wanted. I had spent so many years focusing on providing, on sacrificing, that I had forgotten to live for myself. I had let Marcus's needs, Jennifer's opinions, and everyone else's expectations dictate my actions, but no more. I wasn't going to sit back and let my life be defined by what others thought was best for me. I was going to live on my terms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had the strength to do that. It was that evening when Marcus came by again. He was holding a small box in his hand, the kind that you would expect to hold something valuable, something important. When he handed it to me, I could see the apprehension in his eyes, as if he was afraid I wouldn't accept it. "What's this?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "Open it," he said, a nervous smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I opened the box, and inside was a set of keys, 2 keys, each with a small label attached. One read "front door" and the other read "back door." I looked at him, confused. "Marcus, what is this?" He sat down beside me, his expression serious. "Dad, these are the keys to the house. I know it sounds crazy, but I've been thinking, this house, this place, it's not just a building. It's home, and I want to give you something. I want you to know that I respect your decision. I respect that you want to stay here. But I also want you to know that I'm here. If you ever need help, if you ever need anything, I'm just a phone call away. This is your home, Dad, but I want to be a part of it too." The weight of his words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, I saw Marcus as a man, not just as my son. He wasn't trying to take control. He wasn't trying to change me. He was offering me respect. And for the first time, I felt like we were truly standing on equal ground. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You don't know what this means to me. I just want you to know I'm here for you. Dad, you don't have to go through this alone." That night, I sat on the porch with the keys in my hand, watching the stars twinkle above. It wasn't just the keys to the house that I held in my hands. It was the keys to a new chapter, one where I could live for myself, where I could take care of myself, and where my son was finally seeing me for who I was. Not just as a father, but as a person who had lived a full, rich life and was still figuring it out. The future felt different now, not easier, not perfect, but different. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to face it alone. The morning after Marcus gave me the keys, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light through the windows, and for the first time in a while, the house didn't feel like a place of tension. It felt like a home again, a place where I had the power to shape my future, to decide what came next. I had spent years feeling trapped in my own decisions, locked into a role I had made for myself as a provider, a protector, and a father. But in those final words Marcus had spoken to me, there was something different. He wasn't trying to change me or make me into someone I wasn't. He was simply acknowledging the life I had lived and offering me respect. That was something I hadn't realized I needed until now. As I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee and looking out over the yard, I realized just how much had changed. The house, once filled with the chaos of raising a child and then silenced by the loss of Sarah, was now quiet in a different way. It was a peace that had come not from the absence of conflict, but from the acceptance of the space between Marcus and me, and the understanding that we were both on our own paths, but that didn't mean they had to diverge entirely. I had been so focused on surviving, on pushing through, that I had lost sight of the beauty in the small things, the sound of birds in the morning, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the way the light changed as the day shifted from morning to afternoon. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and I fell into a rhythm. He came over more often, but it wasn't the strained visits I had grown used to. These were the kind of visits where we didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about what had happened, what needed to change. Instead, we simply were. We sat on the porch, watching the kids play in the yard, laughing together, sharing stories of the old days when he was little, and I was the one who couldn't keep up with his energy. I would find myself enjoying these small moments that had always been there, but that I had missed, clouded by the years of bitterness and frustration. I realized that this was the gift Marcus had given me, the ability to see the present, to appreciate it without constantly looking back at the past. But as much as I wanted to focus on the good, there were still moments of doubt. Sometimes when I would be alone in the house, my mind would wander back to those days when everything felt broken. When it felt like I had given so much and all I had gotten in return was silence, distance, and resentment. I couldn't erase those memories, and I didn't want to. They had shaped who I was, and I had earned the right to feel those feelings, but that was the key. I had earned it, I had lived through it, and I had survived. One afternoon, as I was finishing up some gardening, Marcus came over with a fresh batch of coffee. He handed me a mug, and we sat on the porch together in comfortable silence, sipping the hot liquid, watching the sun dip low on the horizon. "You know," Marcus said after a long pause, his voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking a lot about the past, about how things used to be. I don't think I really realized how much you did for me. I think I always just assumed it was your job. But now I see that it wasn't. You didn't have to give up everything for me. You didn't have to work as hard as you did, push yourself as much as you did. And I know I took that for granted." His words were heavy. I could feel the sincerity in them, but there was something else too, a weight, a burden he had been carrying. He wasn't just apologizing for the past. He was owning it. He was letting go of the guilt that had been eating at him, and that was something I hadn't expected. "Not after everything that had happened?" "Marcus," I said, my voice soft, "I did it because I loved you, and I wanted the best for you. But I didn't do it because I expected anything in return. It wasn't a debt. It was a choice. But I didn't expect you to carry the weight of it all either. It's time for me to live for myself. And you need to live for you." He nodded, the lines of guilt on his face softening, replaced by something else, a sense of clarity, of understanding. "I think I'm starting to get it," he said quietly. "I've been so caught up in trying to fix things, trying to make everything right, that I didn't see what was right in front of me. You were right, Dad, you've done enough. And now it's my turn to be there for you." That night, after dinner, I sat on the porch once again, the cool night air swirling around me. I had thought, in the past, that living alone meant being isolated, that being independent meant being lonely. But now I saw that independence didn't have to mean isolation. It didn't have to mean being disconnected from the people you loved. It just meant that you could stand on your own, make your own choices, and still be supported by the ones who cared about you. As I sat there, I realized that I wasn't as alone as I had once felt. I had my son, I had my home, and I had the freedom to live the way I wanted to. The future was still uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, of course. I wasn't naive. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control. Not of everything, life was never that simple, but of my own destiny. And that was enough. Over the following months, things between Marcus and me continued to improve. We didn't have all the answers. There were still awkward silences, still moments of uncertainty, but they were fewer and farther between. We were learning how to navigate this new phase of our relationship, how to balance the old with the new. Marcus kept his promise. He was there when I needed him. He didn't push me. He didn't try to take over. He respected my decisions even when they weren't the ones he would have made, and I respected him for that. I had spent so many years being the one to give, the one to make sacrifices, but now I could see that Marcus was growing into a man who could make sacrifices of his own. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Marcus turned to me. "Dad," he said, his voice full of sincerity, "thank you. For everything. For being patient with me, for letting me in. I don't think I could ever fully repay you for everything you've done. But I want you to know that I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." I looked at him and smiled, the weight of the past finally starting to lift. "You don't have to repay me, Marcus. I've always done what I thought was best for you. And seeing you finally understand that, that's enough for me." As I sat there, watching my son and the world around me, I realized that the future was wide open. It wasn't perfect. It never would be, but it was mine, and it was ours. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The past was behind us, and the future, whatever it held, was something we would face together. As the days turned into weeks, the house felt like home once more. Not because it was perfect, but because it was ours. Marcus and I had worked through our differences, rebuilt the trust that had been broken, and found a new way to be there for each other. There was still a long road ahead, but the foundation was laid. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe easy. I had reclaimed my life. My son had finally understood that it wasn't just about the house or the past. It was about respect. About seeing me for who I was, not just as a father, but as a man. We were no longer bound by guilt, anger, or the past. We were simply father and son, walking forward into the future, one step at a time. Thank you for joining us on this journey of growth, forgiveness, and new beginnings. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about life, family, and the power of second chances. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Has something in your life ever needed rebuilding? Let's talk about it. And remember, it's never too late to start over.